500,000 Americans are expected to die this year from cancer, equal to 5 jumbo jets crashing every day. The number of Americans who die from cancer each year is more than all those who have died in all U.S. wars combined, and this happens every single year. After a cancer diagnosis, people tend to clean up their diets. About a third to a half of breast cancer patients, for example, make healthy dietary changes following diagnosis, such as increasing fruit and vegetable consumption, decreasing meat, fat, and sugar intakes. Does this actually help that late in the game? Well, the Women's Healthy Eating and Living Study was undertaken a few thousand breast cancer survivors to determine if a plant-based, low-fat, high-fiber diet could influence breast cancer recurrence rates and survival. Previously, they famously reported that simple changes, 5 or more servings of fruits and veggies a day, and just like walking 30 minutes a day, 6 days a week, was associated with a significant survival advantage, cutting risk nearly in half. Note I said fruits and veggies and exercise. Here's the proportion of women with breast cancer surviving 9 years in the study if they had low fruit and vegetable consumption and low physical activity, or high in one and low in the other. But here's the survival curve of those high in both. And it worked just as well in women with estrogen receptor negative tumors, which normally have twice the mortality, unless you eat a few fruits and veggies and take a few strolls. The high should really be in quotes. I mean, you could eat 5 servings in a single meal, and certainly walk more than like 2 miles a day. Imagine for a second you have been diagnosed with breast cancer. Imagine sitting in that chair in the doctor's office as your doctor gives you the news. But there's a new experimental treatment that can cut your chances of dying in the next few years from like 16% down to just 4%. To quadruple their survival rate, many women would remortgage their homes to fly to some quack clinic in Mexico, would lose all their hair to chemo, but most, apparently, couldn't stand the thought of eating broccoli. And indeed, that's what the latest report from the Women's Healthy Eating and Living Study found. Fruits and vegetables may be good, but cruciferous vegetables may be better. For women on tamoxifen, for example, if one of their 5 daily servings of fruits and veggies was broccoli or cauliflower, collards, cabbage, or kale, the risk of cancer recurrence may be cut in half. $2 million men in the U.S. are living with prostate cancer. Now, that's better than dying from prostate cancer. Catch it when it's localized, and your 5-year survival is practically guaranteed. But once it really starts spreading, your chances drop to 1 in 3. Thus, identification of modifiable factors that affect the progression of prostate cancer is something that deserves study. So, Harvard researchers took more than 1,000 men with early-stage prostate cancer and followed them for a couple years to see if there's anything in their diet associated with a resurgence of the cancer, such as spread to the bone. Compared to men who hardly ate any eggs, men who ate even less than a single egg a day had a significant 2-fold increase in the risk of prostate cancer progression. The only thing worse was poultry consumption, up to 4 times the risk of progression among high-risk men. They think it might be the cooked meat carcinogens, the heterocyclic amines, that for some reason build up more in chicken and turkey muscles than in other meats. But what about the eggs? Why would less than once-a-day egg consumption double the risk of cancer progression? It may be the choline. A plausible mechanism that may explain the association between eggs and prostate cancer progression is high dietary choline. Egg consumption is the determinant of how much choline you have in your blood, and higher blood choline has been associated with a greater risk of getting prostate cancer in the first place, so the choline in eggs may both increase one's risk of getting it and then having it spread, and also having it kill you. choline intake and the risk of lethal prostate cancer. Choline consumption associated with not just getting cancer and spreading cancer, but also significantly increased risk of dying from it. Those that ate the most had a 70% increased risk of lethal prostate cancer. Another recent study found that men who consumed 2.5 or more eggs per week, that's just like 1 egg every 3 days, had an 81% increased risk of lethal prostate cancer. Now, it could just be the cholesterol in eggs that's increasing fatal cancer risk, but it could also be that choline. Maybe that's why meat, milk, and eggs have all been associated at one time or another with advanced prostate cancer, because of the choline. In fact, choline is so concentrated in cancer cells, if you follow choline uptake, you can track the spread of cancer throughout the body. But why may dietary choline increase the risk of lethal prostate cancer? Well, remember, dietary choline is converted in the gut into trimethylamine, and so the Harvard researchers speculated that the TMAO from the high dietary choline intake may increase inflammation, and this may promote progression of prostate cancer to lethal disease. In the New England Journal of Medicine, that same Cleveland Clinic research team that did the famous study on carnitine repeated the study, but this time, instead of feeding people a steak, they fed people some hard-boiled eggs. And just as they suspected, a similar spike in that toxic TMAO. So it's not just red meat. And the link between TMAO levels in the blood and strokes, heart attacks, and death was seen even in low-risk groups, like those with low-risk cholesterol levels. So eating eggs may increase our risk regardless what our cholesterol is, because of the choline. It's ironic that the choline content of eggs is something the egg industry actually boasts about, and the industry is aware of the cancer data. Through the Freedom of Information Act, I was able to get my hands on an email from the executive director of the industry's Egg Nutrition Center to an American Egg Board executive, talking about how choline may be a culprit in promoting cancer progression, certainly worth keeping in mind as we continue to promote choline as another good reason to consume eggs.